Just wondered in what part of the plan does sort of like the ones up the coast get looked at, like the Waiapu, which is a big concern for me.
The answer is that there is a project currently between Ngāti Porou, the Ministry of Primary Industries and GDC looking at the Waipaoa, the Waiapu restoration. So we think that we will start developing a catchment management plan for the Waiapu next year. That will look at all of those kinds of issues around erosion control. So the first step of that was to look at the East Coast Forestry Project and the way in which money is available for planting of trees on erosion-prone land. But the second stage would be to look at much more the other things that feed into that river in the widest way. Catchments are, of course, really big. That would take up most of the East Coast.
Yeah, Jamie Quick, ratepayer. Oh, what I want to know is there's going to be a dairy farm intensification up in Motu. It's one of the most important rivers in the North Island, and District Council administers the top part of that catchment where this is going to happen. How are those rivers going to be dealt with when they cross boundaries and all that sort of thing?
Because we've started that work on the Waiapu, that's why we thought it would be the next catchment. But Trevor has suggested that maybe we want to do two at one time, and the Motu would need to be the next one as the most urgent actually in the region. And I presume that we would need to cooperate across council boundaries with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to ensure that we had a cooperative catchment management plan.
I'm just a bit curious about the fracking that's been introduced. If Waipaoa is such a priority, then why would we risk with the fracking? Because we know what the historical trauma that Taranaki has experienced and is experiencing as a result of their fracking.
We have not so far received a consent. There has been no application for consenting on fracking in this region. It would be naive to suggest there's not one coming, so we do expect that one will come, and council officers will need to make the call at that time in terms of looking at the science that is available. That's not to say either way. As I say, at the moment we haven't seen anything from any of the oil exploration companies to say how they would do any of their work. So we can't then, in all good faith, say what we think about that because we don't know what they would be preparing.
I made a submission under the, which one? Annual plan about the water plan, wasn't it? Yeah. And you guys gave a feedback on my comment, which I was interested in, because we're getting to the stage now where the draft Waipaoa catchment's coming out. In a number of regions, they've set, I think Canterbury is one example, they've set out, what's the word in the new NPS? Committee? Zone committee, which is a management for the catchment, made up of people who actually live in the area, have economic and social and cultural ties, and know how the thing functions, who can be an advisory or whatever. But the feedback I got was that there is no intention of setting up management or zone committees to implement our catchment plans, and I wondered if you could explain why.
We've got to be practical about our resources and how much we can put into each area. So if we get down to having too many committees, which has also quite a lot of administrative roles in it, we actually aren't an ECAN. ECAN's got huge resources, so we've got to be a bit pragmatic in this area about how we can do it. So we broke it down to sections that we think can work, and that's basically how we've done it. And I think the FRAG, in terms of we looked at who was around that table, and it's a pretty good representation. So if we get into smaller, there's actually resource issues, we get into smaller aspects of it. So you've got to be a little bit pragmatic. We haven't got a huge team, but I think there's no reason though, again, what previous speaker said, that's about community initiatives coming from that more local community, and that's how it can work out in terms of actually doing some of these inputs. So again, the district plan and the plan process allows for submissions on this whole, on the plan itself as well. So we think, for our community, we've actually had a pretty good capture, but there'll be lots of different models how you can do it. That's one model that Terry's talking about. There's ours, we think, was a good one to work for this I guess, community at this stage.
I've got a question around the framework that the decision making happens under. For me, there's a core thing missing in terms of the land being at the core of the decision making. So I'm hearing a lot about the economic value in the decisions that are being made and the outcomes, and for what we as humans and people can do on the land and achieve on the land and through the waterways. What's the thinking behind the way that that framework of decision making has been put together?
Basically, the framework is basically controlled by the Resource Management Act, so that's how we're coming under that legislation. The National Policy Statement for Freshwater is an NPS, it's got an NPS under that legislation, so that governs how we look at everything. So it's the framework set by legislation.
I'm just talking about land, and land being at the centre of the core purpose of making decisions, rather than what we do on the land or what we can gain from the land or the waterways. Yeah.
Because my comment was going to be that under legislation in the settlements on the Tūranga side is the formation of a local leadership body. The local leadership body then gives iwi a statutory relationship with council that is more than an advisory process as it might be now. The local leadership body can't be enacted until the Mahaki settlement comes into play, and then all three iwi are settled and by statute have rights around